Welcome into Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Today on the show, what should the Falcons do with their second and third round picks? Could Strider be in line to break a record? And we'll recap Wrestlemania. It's all next. It's Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta. And it starts now.
Hittin Hard is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. We ask you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to all of your podcasts. Get the latest episodes of Hittin Hard as soon as they become available. And then give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. So we've talked a lot about the first round draft pick at number 8 that the Atlanta Falcons have and what they should do with this. Now, I'm in the camp of they need to go get an edge rusher. You can't draft and have too many pass rushers. You can't draft and have too many guys that sack the quarterback. But when you look at second and third round picks, and the Falcons draft number 44 in the second round overall pick, number 75 with the number 75 overall pick in the third round, what should the Falcons do with all of that? Now, if I go off the premise that the Falcons take an edge player with that first round pick, if the Falcons don't take an edge player, if they take a corner at number 8, then they should take an edge player at number 44 and no less than that, whatever that player is. If they draft edge, then I do think that cornerback is really in play at number 44. Now, a couple of the names, I do think Devin Witherspoon is going to go first round. Cam Smith, Christian Gonzalez, Joey Porter Jr., and Keely Ringo, and probably even Deonte Banks. Those guys are probably all first round picks. But you look at Emmanuel Forbes, Eli Ricks, Clark Phillips III, Garrett Williams, Jalen Jones. I think that those are all guys that are in that second round group. So while you may not have the top corner, or one of the top corners, because I do think that they will be a pretty good run on corners in that first round. Especially as you get through the middle of the draft and toward the bottom end of the draft, I think there'll be a pretty good run on corner. Corner is a premium position now in the NFL. You can't have too many guys that cover players. Why? Because this is where this coverage sack thing is such a mythology. When you have 3, 4, 5 guys that are all running out in patterns, you can't have too many guys that cover them. And you're never going to have enough guys to cover everybody in NFL offense. It's not 1978 where you have 2 guys that go out in a pattern and maybe a third guy as a tight end or a running back that catches balls out of the backfield or whatever in a short route. It's not 1978 where you only have to match up with a couple of guys. You have 3, 4, 5 guys at a time that are all running out in patterns. So coverage sacks, you're never going to have enough guys that can cover everybody on the football field. So I obviously, if it's not an edge player at number 8, then I want the next best available edge player. And again, I think it makes a lot of sense to draft edge at 8 because as you start to chip away in those, draft prospects, because look, there's going to be a run on those guys. There always is a run on those guys. But you figure Anderson, Wilson, Van Ness, Nolan Smith, those are going to be guys that are going to be drafted probably fairly early. And you might even see guys like Andre Carter II, B.J. Ojulari. If those guys aren't drafted in the end of the first round, they probably will be high second round picks. So I do think that once you start to chip away at the edge class and the prospects that are going to be there, that it gets weaker and weaker and weaker. That's why I want the best player at number 8 that sacks the quarterback, right? We talk about best player available. Well, then best player available needs to be able to sack the quarterback, bar none, okay? But I do like the cornerback class. I do think that cornerback is a deep position. Even if you don't get one of those top guys, I do think that's a deep position. The other thing that I think will be in play, believe it or not, when you come second to third round, will be the wide receiver position. That I do think that the Falcons are looking to draft a young wide receiver and develop him. Now, look, I know, and again, I've seen some mocks that say even Jackson Smith and Jigba, if they draft Jackson Smith and Jigba at number 8, they should burn down Flowery Branch. I mean, literally burn down Flowery Branch, because at this point, we'd have no clue of what we're doing. But I could see second round, third round. I definitely see wide receiver being in play. Now, I would think that Quentin Johnson and Jordan Addison and probably Zay Flowers and Jackson Smith and Jigba, those guys are probably all first or very high second round picks when all is said and done. But maybe a Jalen Hyatt falls. Maybe a Cedric Tillman falls. Parker Washington. I mean, I think that there will be a decent crop of wide receivers, even sort of high in the second round, that the Falcons will have a chance to pick from. So I definitely think that cornerback, wide receiver is definitely in play. What I would personally love is to go edge player at number 8 and then draft either second or third round, draft another interior offensive lineman. I would really like to see interior offensive line be drafted in this and fairly high. Like if you told me that they went edge at number 8 and they went interior line, guard or center at number 44, wouldn't have a problem with that at all. Because I still think that those are the two key positions that could look to be upgraded. You know, obviously our left guard is a mishmash of different people, whether it's Matt Hennessy, whether it's Jalen Mayfield, whether it's Hittin. I mean, it's just a real mishmash of players that are there right now on the roster. And maybe they sign Elijah Wilkinson at some point here, but it's a real mishmash of players when you talk about left guard. And I'm not 100% sold on our centers. You know, both Hennessy and Dahlman are two undersized guys that either one of those guys, I think they all profile the same, but obviously Dahlman played a little bit better through the second half of last year, but I still don't have as much confidence in Drew Dahlman. I'll have to see it to believe it. Okay. Now, again, the coaching staff, they've seen all these guys that they watch every practice that they have. Again, I guess if they believe in Dahlman or guys or Hennessy, then we'll have to take their word for it. But I wouldn't mind seeing another young guy with even some higher draft capital than what Dahlman or Hennessy were picked at to be in the mix for either a guard position or the center spot. Just create more competition and see what you can develop from one of those guys. But I do think that corner, if I had to pick, that corner might be the number 1 pick, either 8 or 44. One of those spots I do think is going to be addressed by cornerback. I want edge first and foremost. I could settle for a corner at number 44, and then I'll look at interior offensive line for my third round. Truthfully, running backs, wide receivers, I can find those guys, right? Right? We had a running back that was a 5th round pick that was a 1,000-yard running back, right? We can find some of those guys. You can find some of those guys through the 4th, 5th round, even drafting your quarterback, even drafting a Hendon Hooker if he's still there, or a Stetson Bennett, or players like that. You can still find some value in all that. But I think that corner, if it's not in play for number 8, I definitely think at number 44. And my wish would be interior offensive line, center or guard, maybe in that second to third round when all is said and done. All right, let's talk about our friends over at FanDuel as we're wrapping up the March Madness tournament and headed right toward NBA playoff action, as this is the last week of the NBA season. FanDuel is America's number 1 sports bet, and they've got you covered. New customers can get in on the action and claim your no-sweat first bet, where you can win as much as $1,000 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet on everything from money lines to prop bets to who's going to win, everything in between. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a bigger payout with the same game parlay. So head to fanduel.com/locked on. That's fanduel.com/LOCKEDON and claim your no sweat first bet, where if your first bet doesn't win, you can claim as much as $1,000 in bonus bets when that first bet doesn't win. FanDuel.com/locked on. Head to the website, learn more, make every moment worth FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. So, could Spencer Strider be in line to set a record? What record am I talking about? I'm talking about the single season strikeout record for the Atlanta Braves. Now, let's preface this when we say this, okay? And by the way, Strider does have the highest strikeouts per 9 innings ever for a Braves pitcher, 13 and a half last year. Now, when you look at the single season strikeout totals for the Braves as a franchise, right? This is including Boston, Milwaukee, and Atlanta, okay? So you have Charlie Buffington, right? From 1884 is number one with 417 strikeouts. I'm guessing he pitched about 450 innings because that's what those guys did back then. Jim Whitney is number two at in 1883 with 345 strikeouts. And then Jordan Clarkson, who is a Hall of Fame pitcher, by the way, 1889 with 284. So let's eliminate the 19th century, literally the 19th century players, and let's focus on more modern 20th century and 21st century types of players, okay? Smoltzy has the record for the Atlanta Braves franchise as far as the Atlanta Braves go, but he's fourth overall on the Braves all-time franchise list. 276 strikeouts. Jim Whitney, who is also had in 1884, he had 270 strikeouts. Then Nuxie has the number 6 and number 7 strikeout totals for a season, 262 and 77, 248 and 78. So if we just focus on modern day, Smoltzy's at 276 and 96, Negro's at 262 and 77, and Nuxie's also in 78 at 248. Do I think that Spencer Strider could definitely break a record like that? Absolutely. Absolutely. Even if Strider gets to 180 innings, I definitely think that he could break that 276 mark that Smoltzy has. And that is well within grasp. I'll even ask this question, okay? If there was a way for Spencer Strider to get to 200 innings, and I know that in today's modern baseball, we talk about all of these records that are not likely to fall or milestones that are not likely to be reached, right? We talk about 300 wins and different things like that, right? Pitchers winning not just 300 games, but pitchers pitching 200 innings a year is something that we don't see a whole lot of, right? But if Strider could find a way, and I think that this is very doable, if he could find a way to be 180, 200 innings, could he be a 300 strikeout pitcher? Now, 300 strikeouts was a little bit more regular in the 70s and 80s to 90s, right? We saw J.R. Richards, Sandy Koufax, Nolan Ryan do that, and then Randy Johnson. I think Curt Schilling had a year. I think Pedro had a year. Chris Sale has been a 300 strikeout pitcher, right? So there are modern guys that are, not 1884 types of players. The Ryans and the Nolan Ryans and Koufax and J.R. Richard and Randy Johnson, guys like that are more modern types of pitchers. I wonder if Strider, if he couldn't find a way to pitch 180 to 200 innings, couldn't be a 300 strikeout pitcher. Obviously, he's got immense swing and miss stuff. Again, last year, he set the Braves franchise record with 13 and a half strikeouts per 9 innings. And you figure he had 9 strikeouts in 6 innings the other day. I don't think there's anything. I think that now that he's got everything kind of figured out, and look, there'll be bumps and stuff like that on the road, on the way, on this kind of journey that he's got. There's always going to be a pothole or two that eventually some of the league will catch up. But Strider stuff is so magnificent that it's such good swing and miss stuff. And that plays in to modern era baseball. The fact is that Modern era baseball isn't about contact. It's about hitting the ball as hard as you can, hitting the ball out of the park as far as you can, and everything else be damned. Walks, patience, batting average, moving a runner along, hitting the other way, putting a ball to the wall to hit a double. That's all by the wayside now. That we don't have the league isn't filled up with the Tony Gwynns and the Rod Carews and all that kind of stuff anymore, right? Guys are not in that mindset. Guys are exit velocity. How far can I hit it? And they'll take the sacrifice of striking out because everybody strikes out now, right? I mean, if you're not 140, 150 strikeouts as a batter, that's just kind of normal in today's baseball. But you look at Strider, who, if he pitched 180 innings, I don't think there's any doubt that he wouldn't have more than 276 strikeouts in a season. And that's what the record is for Smoltzy, 276 with the Braves, if we don't count 19th century, Braves franchise record. So could Strider even be a 300 strikeout pitcher? I don't see why not. He's got the stuff for it. He's got all the swing and miss stuff. It plays into what modern baseball is. Everything about Strider. And look, Strider's one of these guys that wants the ball, right? I don't think Strider is one of these guys that is a 5-inning just type of pitcher. I think Strider's one of those guys that you give the ball to and you feel like your bullpen has a minimal amount of work to be done, right? I think he can be a 6 to maybe even 7-inning type of pitcher. I don't know that he's necessarily an innings eater because nobody's an innings eater nowadays. And you're just trying to find at least 6 innings out of a starter. But if you figure if he gets 30 starts and he pitches 6 innings to start, he's going to have 180 innings. I don't think 276 strikeouts is all that unfathomable. I don't think that that's a lofty goal to try to hit. So we talked about last year at the start of the season that I thought that the Braves would set their franchise record for strikeouts by a pitching staff. Well, they did that. And obviously Strider was one of those guys that he came up and obviously he took over, that staff and he was a 200 strikeout pitcher. Now I want to see, honestly, if he could be a 300 strikeout guy. If he could be a modern day Randy Johnson, Nolan Ryan, J.R. Richard, Chris Sale kind of pitcher that just racks up strikeout after strikeout after strikeout. Now, again, J.R. Richard, Nolan Ryan, those are guys that would pitch 300 innings, right? I mean, back in the old days of, hand a guy a baseball, and if he's your starter, you expect him to pitch 7, 8, 9 innings out there and complete a whole bunch of games. Not expecting him to do that, but even at 6 innings a start, and he gets, say, 30, 32 starts, he could certainly be in that 276 mark. So watch out for that particular number when it comes to Spencer Strider as he chases down potentially the all-time strikeout record. I certainly think that the 276 is very doable, and if he beats John Smoltz's record, look, he could be potentially a 300 strikeout guy when all is said and done. All right, let's talk about our friends over at Built Bar as obviously the tournament wrapping up here tonight, but you can still get in on the action at BuiltMarchMadness.com and vote for your favorite bar or puff. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com, vote for your favorite bar or puff, no matter what type it is out there, and then you could be registered to win a box of Built Bars. We're going to give 50 lucky Locked On listeners a free box of Built Bars, and one lucky Locked On fan is going to win a 12-month subscription where you're going to have Built Bars delivered right to your home. So head to BuiltMarchMadness.com today. Vote for your favorite bar or puff, 4 grams of sugar, 130 calories, 17 grams of protein. Whether you want the texture and the flavor of the protein-infused marshmallow puffs, whether you want traditional protein bars as is, vote for your favorites today at BuiltMarchMadness.com. Check out, obviously, at Built.com, all of the selection of all the different protein bars that they have available, but register to win a free box of Built Bars or that 12-month subscription by going to Built.com today and BuiltMarchMadness.com. Vote for your favorites. Well, let's recap WrestleMania here. Night 1 was certainly better than night number 2. You had a plethora of matches in night number 1 that were fantastic when all was said and done. You had John Cena versus Austin Theory. I thought that was a really good match. That was a great opener on night one. And look, the right guy won. I know a lot of people were upset that John Cena got pinned, but you have to look at the fact of putting Austin Theory over and the fact that Austin Theory had to cheat to win, right? That's what he does. He's a heel. I have no problem with the result of this match. It didn't make as much sense from a business perspective to have John Cena pin Austin Theory because a lot of people thought that that was what was going to happen. I like the idea that Theory pinned him and he had to cheat to do it. I got no issue with all of that went on. Logan Paul obviously is another guy. Seth Rollins pinned Logan Paul, but Logan Paul has definitely made a name for himself in the WWE. Again, he's only had like 4, maybe 5 matches at most, but you always know he's going to do something crazy, and he gets the business. I give Logan Paul a lot of credit. He has really adapted to what wrestling is, and he gets the business aspect of it. He gets the idea of selling. He gets the idea of, again, the modern type of match with the high spots and different things like that. So I give Logan Paul all the credit in the world. He may have lost at WrestleMania, and it made sense to have Seth Rollins pin him, but I give Logan Paul all the credit in the world. I really did like the Rey Mysterio, Dominic Mysterio, and I didn't know how I would feel about this angle leading into it. But last Friday, when Rey Mysterio finally hit Dominic, that was a massive crowd pop. That's the thing that everybody had been waiting for, and then he makes the match. I really like that whole angle out there, and I didn't know how I'd like this match, but I thought it was a great spot when Rey pulled off his belt and started spanking Dominic. Like, that was a great spot. Thought they did a really good job, and you could see that Dominic's got a little bit of that Rey in him. I mean, obviously, look, he's a different kind of kid and a different kind of athlete, and he's a much bigger kid, but you can see that he's got some of that he's learned from his old man. So I thought that was a really good match and a really well done angle. Then we get to what was the highlight of night number 1, Rhea Ripley pinning Charlotte Flair to win the WWE SmackDown Women's Championship. This was a tremendous match, and this was arguably one of the best matches I've ever seen out of the women's division in WWE history. There were some really good matches in NXT back in the old days, and Becky and Charlotte have had some really good matches, but I thought Rhea and Charlotte, who, by the way, in the 2020 pandemic WrestleMania, they really stole the show where they had the best match. Rhea's a much better worker now. This is, again, 3 years later that they've had this match. She's a better worker. She's got a better defined personality. She's definitely the heel in all of this. And I thought that she and Charlotte just tore the house down. That was a phenomenal match. I give those girls all the credit in the world. And then the highlight of the night was Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens defeating the Usos to win the undisputed tag title. And we talked about this, that massive pop, sending the fans home happy, right? I mean, it was all set up for Owens and Zayn to finally beat the Usos after whatever, their 600-700 days of being the champs and all this kind of stuff, one of the longest tag team championship runs in history. It was all set up because I really did think that the Bloodline was going to walk out with none of the titles when all was said and done. So check number 1, night number 1, Usos lose the tag team titles to Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. So everything was setting itself up that, okay, this all makes sense, and it's setting itself up. Night number 1 was spectacular. Night number 2, okay, Brock and Omos had a pretty good match. It was quick. The right guy won. It was some big spots. You saw the big F5 from Brock. Got no problem with that. The right guy went over, and certainly Omos was not going to pin Brock Lesnar was all was said and done. Then the match that stole the night on night number 2 was Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, and Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. And when I tell you that this was physically one of the most intense matches I have ever seen, I promise you that there were plenty of potatoes that were thrown in that match. But I can tell you this, it didn't matter who won. Gunther won, and he's the right guy. Again, they need to put the belt or keep the belt on him for a long time. He's that good of a worker. And if you want to bring back the allure of the Intercontinental Championship, rather than changing belts all the time, let Gunther have like a 2-year run with the Intercontinental Championship and slay all the different people that come up. But when I tell you that none of those guys came out a winner, because Sheamus's chest was all bloodied up from all the chops. Gunther was all black and blue through his chest. I mean, those guys were landing haymaker after haymaker, and the chops and the physicality of that match, that's what stole the show. Like, that was physically one of the most intense matches I've ever seen. That wasn't a shoot. That wasn't two guys actually fighting in the ring. So kudos to those guys for the great match that those guys had. Bianca versus Asuka was also a really good match. Bianca winning retaining, I should say, the title. That was the right call. The funniest thing was Shane O'Mac. And listen, Shane O'Mac came back. He was going to wrestle The Miz. They had it all set up. And then Shane tears his quad on a leapfrog, and he's injured and hurt. And he went down in a heap. And it's funny because Vince McMahon in the 2005 Royal Rumble, when he came out to confront, who was it? John Cena and I can't remember now. But when he came out to confront John Cena and all that and restart the Royal Rumble match, he tore both of his quads. So Shane only tore one quad, but he tore both of his quads. And look, they did a good job of just kind of filling in the gaps and just doing what they had to do. Snoop Dogg dropped an elbow on a people's elbow on The Miz, and they didn't kind of know what to do, but they made the best of that situation. So they did a good job of improvising with all of that. Edge and the Demon, Finn Balor and the Hell in a Cell. I didn't like this match. Too many hats on it. You got a Hell in a Cell match, right? Why do you need tables and kendo sticks and chairs and all this kind of stuff? And then they threw a ladder at Finn Balor, and he busted his head open, and they had to stop the match to legitimately bring the doctors in to look at the cut on his head because he was just gushing blood at that point. So they had to stop the match. Why do you have a hat on a hat? I don't really understand that. And then we get to the main event, Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, and I really thought that this set itself up for Cody winning the titles. They have their WrestleMania moment where he's holding up the two belts. He's going to be the face of the company. Roman is expected to take a extended vacation or just be off television for an extended period of time, and we don't get the moment. Roman pins Cody Rhodes with the help of Solo Sikoa. He interfered in the match. The Usos interfered. Okay, it was plenty of gaga to go along with it, but I didn't like that end result. And I understand. Listen, I love Roman Reigns, but that was not the right finish. You had all of this buildup to get that moment, and you will never recapture that moment again. You will never be able to replicate what that moment would have been with the Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens winning the tag titles, and then Cody having that moment where he holds up both of the belts. I thought they missed a real opportunity there to really make Cody Rhodes the face of the franchise. You know, moving forward, he'd take on all comers. I just thought that was a big letdown. I love Roman. This is not about Roman. He's one of my favorite performers, and he has been magnificent. He and Paul Heyman have been magnificent through this whole run, but that was a really disappointing ending to see Cody Rhodes not hold up the belts and get that babyface moment. And again, I guess they want to go for the 1,000 days of a title, but who cares? What difference does it make? Nobody's going to remember all of that kind of stuff when all is said and done. All right, thank you so much for making Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen every day. Make sure you make Locked On Sports Today your second listen to the biggest stories of the day, instant reactions, big game recaps, take of the day, available Odyssey, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast from. We ask you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Get the latest episodes of Hittin' Hard as soon as they are available. And then give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. Back with you tomorrow. This has been Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, Locked on Sports Atlanta.